Hey, thanks for your interest in the product demo. We're going to give you a tour front to back of Solstice, the Solstice pod, and even some of the components that drive a Solstice deployment. So I'm going to start though by talking about the room setup. What we've got here is a Gen 3 Solstice pod. It supports dual HDMI out, 2 screens at 1080p, or 1 screen at 4K. So it's really great if you're deploying it in a room, like in a video conferencing room where you've already deployed 2 screens, or even in a huddle space where you've got a need for a lot of content in real estate. The other thing I want to mention is the pod is a network attached appliance. Why do we do it that way? Well, it gives you centralized management, it allows you to monitor your pod, and of course it gives you ease of use for users that are already on your corporate network. The other thing it has is actually 2 network devices in that box. We do that because you might be a guest that shows up at a corporate enterprise and you want to share content to the screen, and it's really important that you don't have to, jump through hoops to try to get on the corporate network. You're on the guest network already, why not just hit a button and share your content to the screen? So there's 2 network interfaces, one of them is wireless and one is wired. The wired one goes into your corporate securely. The wireless attaches to your existing Wi-Fi for guests, and they are firewalled from one another. So we do a third-party penetration test every year. We can give you access to take a look at that if you need to, but it really is a secure device that allows 2 classes of users to share content simultaneously. So let's kick off the demo. So I've got the pod here, I've got my screens already all set up. First thing that happens, you walk into the room and you have access to what we call the welcome screen. So you can see already that content is changing on that screen. And really there's a whole variety of things that you can customize for your end users when they walk into the room. Over here I've got the on-screen instructions. Those can be customized through our centralized dashboard. And I see that if I don't have the application, I would just type in the DNS name or the IP address of the room into a browser. As soon as that happens, the client, without having to have admin privileges, downloads to my device, connects me to the display, and actually auto-connects me so I don't have to click again, and then I can click Share My Desktop. So let's take you through the experience once I have the app. So I've already got it here on this laptop, and I'm going to just click Main Conference Room. That's the main use case. I just look at the name and click what I see in my application, and then I type the screen key that's shown here. This allows me to make sure that I'm in the room so I don't accidentally cross-share content somewhere else, and then I click Share My Desktop. So you'll see what happened is this OS X device shared my desktop to the screen, and you can now see my application that runs in the system tray, pops out when I need it on demand, click the display name, connect, and click Share My Desktop. So it's that easy. Now I want to kind of pause there because that's a core user experience. Walk into a room with a device, click the display name you see on the screen, and say Share Desktop. And then when I leave, I of course click Go Away, and I walk back out of the room and disconnect from the screen. That's the core use case. Now it's not where it ends, because I want to take you through the product in a more sophisticated way, because this is really not about replacing the cable with a wireless cable. It's about what happens in your meetings when the cable goes away. So now when I'm connecting, I'm going to click my desktop back up there so you can see the UI. But you'll notice I actually have 3 different ways to share. So the most popular way to share is application window sharing. So let's do that. I'm going to click App Window and go over and go, okay, let's share this PDF document now. And that'll appear on the screen over here because we're in dual screen mode. And I can page through that, and you'll see on my desktop it's moving, but I've also got it over there. What's great about application window sharing is you may have privacy issues, stuff on your desktop you didn't want to share, email alerts coming in and disrupting the meeting. Just click Share App Window, share that application to the screen. Okay? Now, if I want to share other content, so I'm going to share what's called media file sharing. That's the 3rd way to share. And I'm going to share a bunch of other images that are just sitting on my disk. The reason that's interesting is it doesn't force me to open up like a video. If I'm doing a marketing analysis and I've got a feature-length film I want to look at in that meeting, I don't have to first open it on my desktop and hit play and then share it. I can just share it right out of my file system to the screen. So now I've got an application window, I've got a couple other content posts to the screen, and remember that these are really all live videos. So if I update that window, you'll see that it's low latency, 1080p quality, high throughput, all over your existing Wi-Fi. So that's where we spend a ton of time working scientifically and engineering-wise to basically rebuild the engineering of what it means to share video over an existing network, because we actually can do more than just that. The idea is paper on a table. I'm able to put a lot of content out there and share simultaneously. So let me share like a high-resolution video too at the same time. I think it starts to get the point across here. In fact, let me share a 4K video to that screen. And when I say 4K, I really mean it. This is a 4K video streaming at 4K native to that screen. Okay, so I've got a 4K video, an application window, and a couple other content posts coming from this OS X device. But it doesn't stop with a single device. It's already really interesting that one device can cast lots of content into a meeting for analysis. But you can also do that from Windows, from OS X, from iOS tablets, Android tablets and phones, whatever comes to the meeting. And even more importantly, those devices have the exact same user experience that I just had here. Come in, click the display name on my phone, click share, mirror this device, and it goes to the screen. Okay? So why would I want to have this much content on the screen? Well, I want to take you through another thing that's important to talk about, and that's controlling content here in this sort of product tour. So I'm going to actually even add a little bit more. Let me put like a TED Talk up there, and I'm going to loop this video. So I'm going to take you through the user experience of how to control content. Do we always want to look at 6 things at the same time? No way. What you really want to do is think about it with that metaphor of a lot of content in the meeting so that we can then on demand decide what we're looking at. And the way you do that is in the user interface, you have a what you see is what you get UI. If I want to move this guy to here, for example, I literally just click it in here in my UI and drag it, and it works. Okay? I can also drag stuff to what we call the dock. That's the out-of-screen view, so that we can talk about it later. That's really an area that you can stage content for viewing later. You'll notice that if I'm controlling content on one screen, it's not really impacting the screen content over there, but just the same metaphor holds. I can, of course, grab a piece of content and drag it to that other screen because maybe I want to treat that like my parking lot, or we're doing an analysis of a bunch of different things we want to discuss. If I double-click a piece of content, it'll go up into what we call quick view, so we can talk about that content and then put it back. And keep in mind, of course, all of this, even if I quick view that PDF doc, that's still a live video feed. And then I can throw that back where it came from when we're done talking about it. If it's a video file, there's a little video icon in the corner. I can click that in any of the UIs and pause it or hit play. I can seek it to a different part of the video, and I can tell it, why don't you just continue to loop? Okay? And that happens the same in all devices. And if I put a video into the dock, it'll stay paused so that we're not wasting your bandwidth until you bring it back. And I'll hit play on this 4K video because now that it's scaled up, it looks really pretty. Okay, so that's controlling the content experience. It's the same control across all devices. Users really use social convention when they're together to control content simultaneously and have meetings. And I'll give you a quick description of some stuff I see in the field of what's exciting about it. I often see users come, share their content, put it in the dock, wait for the meeting to start, and it's all ready to go. And then context switching now with all that content is enabled through just a drag and drop UI. If you have a touch display, you can do the same. So great, we don't want to force you to walk to the front of the room to have a meeting and use your controls for sharing content, but you can. So if these were touch displays, everything I did where I could go, let's put this in the dock, I could double tap something and make it come full screen, and if I press and hold, I could say, let's delete that piece, we don't need it anymore. And all of that is an egalitarian control mechanism. If you want to control outside of that, so for example, in a tiered classroom or in a more controlled boardroom, you just toggle on our moderator mode, and when content is shared, whoever toggled that on gets a live preview of the content before it reaches, and I'm able to control while guests aren't. So we do have modes where you can just sort of toggle on an easy-to-use moderator queue that gives you random access to people suggesting content coming into a meeting like this. Okay? Okay, so that's great. I want to show you a feature that we took about 1.5 years to build. Most of the building was actually research on what to build because we wanted to add, we've had a lot of customers ask us for collaborative annotation. Now, instinct was, well, why don't I just go up here and write the big word demo that you see at every trade show? That's not what we wanted to build because we found that that's not very useful to users. It turns out the #1 use case is being able to point and denote at things and not have to disengage from the meeting by walking up to the front of the room. So I'm going to go ahead and connect with this mobile device and give you a quick demo of what happens with what we call Solstice Inc. So the app, like I mentioned, is the same on all devices. So I've got my sharing panel, and this app, of course, because it's the same, I can control content just by dragging it in. I can bring back that TED Talk, for example, and put that 4K video over here and tell the TED Talk, go ahead and play. Okay, I did all that from this phone, great. But the phone also now is augmented with a little button called the ink button. So if I click that down, I get a laser pointer on the screen. So that's already valuable because it allows me to point at particular things in a collaborative way and say, hey, I don't think we should have text here at this part of the video. Okay? It works on any mobile device. We're using the gyros built into the thing you've already purchased and brought to the meeting that you're familiar with, so it's highly engaging. You don't have to get out of your chair to use it, and any number of people can do that simultaneously. If I slide the ink button out, I get a different behavior. The button is always depressed. I always have my dot on the screen. It's the color of my user, what we call the meeple down there. And if I want to draw now, I just pen down and I can draw a circle. I can, of course, draw lines. I can even make that, an arrow or something that takes me into an experience that lets me, across this entire palette of 2 displays, do things like, hey, let's compare these 2 things together. I think that's pretty interesting. Okay? Why does it auto-fit? Well, we found in our research that one reason people don't like to use these types of tools is they can't draw well. So we actually detect using this machine learning algorithm, is that a line, is that a circle, what's the user's intent? And coming soon in our roadmap, we will have rectangles and even will fit perfect arrows when we detect that you tried to draw an arrow like that. So it's all about engagement for multiple users, making it easy, fun to use, and engaging with the content that you're working around when you come to a meeting, because content really is king. It allows you to build authority, allows you to have better meetings. Actually, we're finding now through our own analytics portal that you're having shorter meetings because of this stuff, which is always a good thing. It means they're more productive. Okay, so there's some other stuff I wanted to mention as part of the tour before we end, because that's kind of a whole end user experience. Come in, connect, share content, control content, mark up that content, and then disconnect to walk away. But you also have to be secure if you're going to be on the network. Okay, I mentioned the security of the dual network mode. That's very important to us. It runs in some very secure environments with the US government. It also runs in banks and things like that. So we have to be very careful that everything's secure. We have a client-side authentication. We have a screen key that makes sure that you're in the room when you use it. We do third-party pen tests and all the infrastructural components to security, like 802.1x. What happens when I hit a captive portal when this guy tries to dial up to your network? All that stuff's been handled, and you can manage that, enable those features, and you can even install your own security certificate so that the pod will present, your Acme certificate when it talks to your Radius server on your enterprise network. Okay? The other thing to keep in mind is the product's scalable. So it's fun to talk about all these great end user features, but really a lot of our focus has to go into things like centralized management and how do you know, for example, when a pod got unplugged and somebody ruined your meeting. Well, that all happens through 2 components of this whole ecosystem. One of them is called the dashboard. You can download the dashboard for free and take a look, but it allows you to basically manage your thousands of rooms that have Solstice pods. You can shift-click rooms and say, change the background image. Or I want to customize the room instructions for that room. I want to turn on the RSS feed. Or I want to turn on digital signage. That all happens in our dashboard and allows you through a simple UI to sort of stay on top of your deployment and even pull through our over-the-air update server new software updates. Kepler is sort of the corollary to the dashboard, and it's the analytics and day-to-day monitoring tool. It runs in the cloud. It allows your pod to capture all events, and then you go into your Kepler account and understand what those events mean. So it's really funny. You would think, well, how did Solstice, a wireless collaboration platform, really become an analytics platform? Well, really, that was because our customers drove us there. The reality is, if we're already software on your laptops and we're present and helping your meetings get better and be more productive and have people be more engaged, more enjoyable in those meetings, doesn't it make sense for us to report back to you what's actually happening? How often are those rooms being used? Is OS X more important in your conference rooms than an iPad? And what does that mean about how people are rating those meetings in those spaces? So Kepler is really cool. Go take a look at it. We won't cover it here in this product tour, but I want you to be aware of it. There's a Kepler page you can see on the website. It's really worth following up on. It allows you to really predict about where all this is going, where your workplace is going, and be more intelligent about purchasing in the future. I also want to mention that we really pay attention to room integration. We're not really into this idea that we're going to elbow everything else out of the room. We really want to be the platform for your meetings for productivity. And that means that we also have to support other reasons to be in the room. You'll have noticed that when we had the welcome screen in view, that there's the ability to have a calendar on that screen. So I can enable that in the dashboard. Through Office 365 or Exchange, you could walk into the room. The pod will even say, hey, welcome to this meeting. Chris, your meeting's about to begin. And you'll have consistency with your other booking systems on the back end. Calendar integration is really important. Digital signage is probably equally important. So if you point the pod at your digital signage server, so you've already spent a lot of money to build out your infrastructure with companies like AppSpace or X2O Media or whatever you're managing in the cloud for all your content and corporate communications, why not drive that to those screens that sit in your conference rooms that used to just be big black rectangles? You can do that now by just telling the pod, hey, here's the URL. Feed that until someone connects. So I can walk into a room, see signage playing through my glass walls, sit down, start my meeting, and it becomes Solstice. It's just yet another way to make sure your meeting's more productive, more enjoyable. And then, of course, third-party integration is always available through our API. We have an open API that's super easy to use. It's open. You can download the protocol right off our website. We aren't going to have time to cover everything that Solstice can do, so I just wanted to mention a couple other things before we exit. We support AirPlay native, so if you want to mirror an iPad and you don't even have our app, you can do that. We support Miracast, so if you walk in with a Surface Pro and you want to share that screen or extend the desktop when you're showing PowerPoint, do that through Miracast, that's great. And I didn't mention an interesting thing here on the hardware, HDMI input. Now that's not like a video switch where you plug in and Solstice goes away and that source appears. It actually becomes one of these content posts on the screen and it's controllable just like everything else I saw. So I want to mention those before we end. Thanks a lot for taking the demo, and the tour I thought it was good. Hopefully you got a lot out of it. If you're interested, make sure that you sign up for our free 30-day demo pod. We can get one and you can try it at your own company, put it in your own conference room and see what you think. All you have to do is visit mersive.com/trial. So thanks again.